The New Orleans Saints 2021 NFL schedule has been released. You get holiday fun, a full slate of primetime games, and an expectation to reopen at full capacity in the Superdome, meaning the return of the Who Dat Nation as a major factor in New Orleans Saints NFL games. I'm Ross Jackson, and this is Locked On Saints.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? Welcome into another episode here at Locked On Saints, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, here every single Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, covering your New Orleans Saints. Whether it's your first time or your next time, whether you're watching or you're listening, thank you so much for joining us. Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at rockauto.com. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, and all the parts your car will ever need over at rockauto.com. And don't forget to let them know that Locked On sent you. On today's episode, it's going to be a very, very busy one. So let's hit the rundown here. We're going to be going game by game of the Saints 2021 NFL schedule in order to discuss the hardest contests, the toughest stretches, primetime matchups, and the importance of a fast start for this upcoming season for the New Orleans Saints. So we'll go through the first 8 games to start off the show, as the Saints will kick off with a game against the Green Bay Packers at home, and then also celebrate some Halloween time with the division rival Tampa Bay Bucs. Then, in our second segment, we'll pick up from the road trip before Thanksgiving and break down the rest of the Saints' 9 games. Then, for our top 3 Thursday, as we do here every Thursday on Locked On Saints, we'll look at the top 3 most exciting matchups more in depth, and 2021 season schedule is out. It's here. We already know what the teams are going to be, what the order of the games are going to be. So, I got to give you a way too early record prediction as well. So we'll get to all of that. And of course, as always, I'm your host, Ross Jackson. You can follow me on Twitter at Ross Jackson, NOLA. I'll be out there, the deputy brand manager over at Canal Street Chronicles, your Tuesday co-host over at the National Locked On NFL podcast. We got all that and a little bit of lanyard for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints, your team every day. Let's go ahead and get right into it. The Green Bay Packers coming to the Big Easy to kick off week 1. We knew about this early yesterday on Wednesday's episode because Wednesday morning, all the networks released their week 1 openers and their week 1 schedule, as well as some of the primetime games, things like that. So we've known a little bit about this one. Lots of quarterback question marks here. Who will be the Saints starting quarterback? What's going on with Aaron Rodgers? Who's going to be the quarterback for Green Bay? I think it's going to be Jameis Winston versus Aaron Rodgers, but time will tell. There's still so much to figure out within both of these situations. And according to Mayor Cantrell, this was tweeted out by WDSU, she and Roger Goodell apparently had a conversation, and Mayor Cantrell is confident that the New Orleans Saints will open up with full capacity in the yet-to-be-renamed Superdome. We know that it's been purchased by Caesar, but no name for it yet. So that entertainment group will give it a name, and it will be raucous to open up with an afternoon game on Fox. Now let's go to the second game here. It's going to be a divisional game right off the bat up against the Carolina Panthers. Wasting no time to get started with an undefeated record in the division. I'm just playing. But wasting no time getting started with the divisional games here. Still not very high on Sam Darnold personally. I just have to say that. So I don't expect this to be a big time game, as the Carolina Panthers are going to be really getting into the mix there. And how much has that defense really improved? Although, of course, drafting J.C. Horn, a big time boost for that defense this season. But are they going to be able to keep pace with the New Orleans Saints if the offense is clicking early? And they'll need it to be. Then the Saints will take on the New England Patriots, traveling to Foxborough to take on what I assume will still be a Cam Newton-led Patriots team. So obviously a quarterback the Saints are very familiar with, or at least the Saints coaching staff is very familiar with. There's been some turnover in the roster since since the quarterback was in Carolina, but not too terrible much. So there should be a little bit of familiarity there. Could be a bit of a tough game on the road early on in the season, just in terms of traveling this early against a in an environment that's tough to play in, like Foxborough. So we'll see exactly how all of that goes down, but that's going to be a fun game week 3. The Saints will then take on the New York Giants. Great weapons there, but a lot of question marks over at quarterback. Kind of the same thing as Carolina, as we were just talking about. Proven and tested defense is the difference, though, for the New York Giants. Still a little bit to figure out and learn about the Carolina Panthers. And then the Saints will take on the Washington football team. Front seven is going to be the key to that matchup. Can the Saints offensive line keep their quarterback clean going up against a very talented defensive line and a very talented pass rushing core? Oh, and of course, Fitzmagic, of course, will be there as well. Not so great memories of Ryan Fitzmagic going up against the New Orleans Saints, particularly in his Tampa Bay days. But this is going to be a big-time test for the Saints secondary as well, with a very athletic and big-time playmaking potential coming from the wide receiver position. Same thing you can look at the week before going up against the New York Giants, who have reloaded at the receiver position as well. Then the Saints come off of that game with the week 6 bye here. And this is going to be pretty big for them because it's an early bye, particularly in a 17-game season. 5 games out of the way, 12 games to go after this bye week. But it is the second week of Jazz Fest, so we ball. It'll be that simple. Let's go next to Seattle. Now listen to this here. You've got a Monday night football game on the road off of a bye in Seattle with a new quarterback. This is not a great matchup in terms of the early projection for the New Orleans Saints. We'll see where both of these teams are at this time, but this is definitely a game that I would circle and maybe be a little bit concerned about heading into the 2021 season. And then they'll take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, hosting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for some Halloween football action. Could Jameis Winston end up throttling his old team? Remember, the last time Jameis Winston went up against Tampa Bay Buccaneers was in last year's the playoffs up against Tampa Bay, where he threw a touchdown to Traquan Smith. Now I know I came on a trick play, and I'm having fun here, but I do think this is going to be a lot of fun, and it being Halloween night against his old team in the Superdome, that's pretty dope. So I'm looking forward to that game big time. And then we get the Atlanta Falcons taking on the New Orleans Saints. Can they do enough defensively? They added Kyle Pitts, so the offense should be able to keep up, but are they going to be able to keep up with their own defense will be the big question. I have a lot of doubts around what Atlanta is going to look like in 2021. But that's the first half of the Saints schedule there. Those are the first 8 games. Now we're going to get to the road trip heading into Thanksgiving and the toughest stretch of games, I believe, still on the way for the New Orleans Saints. You can see here that this first half of the schedule, very important for the Saints to get off to an early start, and a successful start would be very helpful as the schedule just gets a little bit more complicated as the year rolls along. But that's going to be a little bit of a challenge with a new quarterback for any team. So we'll talk about it more here on the way on today's episode of Locked On Saints. Don't forget to check out our friends over at rockauto.com. You have any needs for your vehicle. I'm serious. Any of them. Brake pads, floor mats, to where you're just looking for accessories. You want a new battery. You need a new engine. You need a new tailgate for your truck. Trust me, it happens. Rock Auto's got you covered. Just head over to rockauto.com. Choose your make, your model, the year of your car, and then just go ahead and let them know what part you need. And then they're going to give you several options of that part, all at a fraction of the price is what you're going to find at the chain store around the corner that charges you, a do-it-yourselfer, a different price than the professionals that come through the door. Not the case with rockauto.com. Whether you're a professional or a do-it-yourselfer, you're charged the same price. And again, it's a fraction of the price anyway, is what you're going to find over at the brick and mortar stores. So go and check them out, rockauto.com. Don't forget to let them know that Locked On sent you by writing Locked On in the How You Hear About Us section, which is right below the shipping information as you check out. Rock Auto, amazing selection, reliably low prices, and all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. All right, y'all, as we continue to tear through the schedule here, a very, very busy episode. I want to remind you, tomorrow you're going to get part 2 of our conversation with New Orleans Saints safety Eric Burrell. You got part 1 on Wednesday. We'll save part 2 for Friday so we can continue to go through the schedule here today. Now, we're looking at weeks 8 and 9. These are going to be pretty big, or actually we're wrapping up out of weeks 8 and 9 and getting into the road trip. The thing about this part of the schedule is that it's a lot of there and back. So what basically is happening is that we just looked at weeks 8 and 9. For those, you're going to have those games at home. Then weeks 10 and 11 on the road, weeks 12 and 13 back at the Dome. Then you're traveling again for weeks 14 and 15, but then you're back at home in the Big Easy for weeks 16 and 17 before going on the road to finish up the season in week 18 against the Atlanta Falcons. So you've got 2 games at home, 2 games at the road, 2 games at home, 2 games on the road. It just alternates in a lot of there and back. So really just a lot of bouncing all around. So it's going to be something to watch in terms of whether or not the Saints are really going to be able to settle in at any point in terms of a rhythm during the back half of this schedule. Now, it gets tough here too, and we'll talk about the toughest stretch of the schedule here in a little bit, but let's continue to go game by game first as we continue on with the first mini road trip. And the first game of that first mini road trip is the 17th game, quote unquote, that was added. It's actually going to be taking place in week 10, but it's the game against the Tennessee Titans. Remember, the 17th game is AFC South versus NFC South for the New Orleans Saints. AFC is hosting all of these 17th games, the additional games. So this will be in Nashville. Now, the last time that the Saints played Tennessee was in Nashville, and the Saints ended up winning that game. Took a little bit of a comeback effort in order for that to happen, but they also didn't have Derrick Henry in that game. So that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. This Saints run defense that has been very good since 2017 has been maybe one of the hallmarks of their defense. Did they lose too much this offseason? Are they going to be able to limit a guy like Derrick Henry? If you do, you win this game as far as I'm concerned. Then they'll travel to Philly right off of that game to avenge themselves, hopefully, in Philadelphia. Jalen Hurts with a surprise win over them last year. This should be a little bit of a cold weather game as it's taking place at least early in November, but still taking place in November. Then the Saints, I guess really it's later in November. It's the 21st, so it's actually a little bit late. So we'll see what the weather ends up looking like for the Saints there. But there's another cold weather game coming up that's probably a little bit more pressing than this Philadelphia game. After that Philadelphia game, the Saints will be hosting Thanksgiving dinner. Yes, it's a primetime matchup on Thanksgiving for the New Orleans Saints going up against the Buffalo Bills. It's a big time matchup on a short week, returning from those 2 away games. So can the Saints hold on to their undefeated Thanksgiving record over the last few years? A big test coming to New Orleans on Thanksgiving night. Then the very next Thursday, a second Thursday primetime game in a row, the Saints will host the Dallas Cowboys. That's going to be, Dak Prescott led, very likely. He's expected to be back before the start of the season. We'll circle back to these games here in just a moment because this is a part of, or maybe the heart of, the toughest stretch. They'll come out of those 2 home games to travel to the Meadowlands to take on the New York Jets and their new shiny quarterback, Zach Wilson, who will have had some time to settle in over the course of the season. Now, we're well into the season at this point, so it makes a lot of sense. As we look at this one's going to be in week 14. So, I mean, he's had some time to maybe catch some rhythm and get some communication going with his wide receiver options and with that offense. Robert Saleh's defense maybe settled in. So this is a game that I'm going to circle as a must watch because this could be one of those games that the Saints should win but don't win. So we'll keep an eye out on this one for sure. And again, it's a cold weather game as well, just like the one in Philly. This is in New Jersey in the thick of winter at this point, and you get a little bit of a mini bye at least coming off of that Thursday night game up against the Dallas Cowboys after a pair of Thursday night games before you get to this one. So at least there's a little bit of good news there. Then the Saints will travel to Tampa Bay. That will be back in prime time for Sunday Night Football. Then they get their another primetime game and the final primetime game of this season, which remember, all these primetime games can be flexed, but the Saints right now maxed out at 5. They have the most primetime games that you can have for an NFL team. Several teams across the NFL have 5. The Saints are one of them. That's good news for the Saints because they're still a draw, despite the fact that Drew Brees is no longer the quarterback. But that final home game will be a Monday night game up against the Miami Dolphins. A very fun one there. I'm very excited to see that, and that'll be at home in New Orleans. Then they'll wrap up the season at home against the Carolina Panthers, on the road against the Atlanta Falcons to wrap all this up. So again, the Saints, 5 primetime games here as we break down the schedule a little bit. They'll be on the road to Seattle, at home for Thanksgiving dinner up against Buffalo. Then they'll stay at home the very next week for another Thursday night football game up against the Dallas Cowboys. They'll travel to Tampa Bay a few weeks later in week 15 to take on the Bucs. I do think that the Saints split that series, by the way, home and away. And then they'll travel right back a couple of weeks later, or really no, the very next week, week 16, to take on and host the Miami Dolphins at home for Monday Night Football. So the Saints have a very fun prime time schedule there. Now, the toughest stretch of this schedule for me is right after the bye. They come off the bye week. They go on the road to Seattle for Monday Night Football. Then they're back at home for Halloween against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Then they get another divisional game against the Atlanta Falcons. Then on the road, then they start that little mini road trip there and backness that they have going on toward the back half of their schedule. They'll be on the road against Tennessee and Philly in November. And then that's followed up by the pair of Thursday night games, the short turnaround week for Thanksgiving against the Bills, and then the next Thursday night game against Dallas. So that's going to be the toughest stretch for me. And that's going to go from the bye week all the way through. So week 7, basically, all the way through, just checking my notes here, week 13. So that's a pretty big stretch of their season that can get a little bit dicey for them. So again, starting off playing well early in this season is going to be big for the Saints. And it starts off with Green Bay, Carolina, New England, and then a pair of NFC East matchups with those first 5 games before the bye week. A strong start there is going to be very important for their schedule. But all in all, there are some very intriguing matchups here for the New Orleans Saints, and I'm very excited now that we have the schedule. We can go through and continue to break it up. But we're going to dig in a little bit more into the 3 most exciting matchups for our top 3 Thursday as we wrap up today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And you know what? I'm going to give you an honorable mention and my record prediction up here next as well as we continue on. And as we do, I thought it would be interesting for you to know, if you haven't seen it already over at betonline.ag, that the New Orleans Saints are actually favored -2.5 against the Green Bay Packers to open up the season at home. Now, they actually opened -3, so I got bet down a little bit, but still, -2.5. They are the favorites week 1 opening up against the Packers. So keep an eye out on that. And if you're feeling good about it, head over to betonline.ag. It's the fastest and easiest way to place all of your bets on all the NFL action you want. NBA, NHL, MLB, UFC, and MMA. Any acronym, they've got it. You can head over to betonline.ag and get in on the action instead of sitting on the sidelines. And don't forget that you can use the promo code as well, Locked On, LOCKEDON, all caps, by going to their website or using your mobile device. That's going to give you a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Once again, that's promo code Locked On, LOCKEDON, for a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. It's BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation, as we wrap up today's episode of Locked On Saints. One more reminder, tomorrow's episode, we'll have Facebook Friday. We'll have 5-Star Friday to shout out those of you who have left 5-star reviews over on iTunes. Thank you very much for doing that, by the way. That certainly helps a ton with the podcast. And to make sure that other Saints fans are able to find the podcast, we're coming off some incredible weeks here and continuing on with another incredible week so far in terms of listening numbers and everybody being a part of the show. So thank you for supporting and for being here as we continue through here with Locked On Saints. Now, as we look through, we're also going to have tomorrow's episode, the second part of Eric Burrell's interview, New Orleans Saints safety, former Wisconsin Badger, so you don't want to miss that. So let's go ahead and jump into our top 3 Thursday here. Every Thursday here at Locked On Saints, we look at a top 3 list. Sometimes it's top 3 plays of a certain season, top 3 players, top 3 moments, things like that. Today, we're looking at we've even done things like top 3 draft picks, top 3 draft trades. We do a lot of fun stuff. Anyway, today's episode is going to be the top 3 most exciting games of the New Orleans Saints 2021 season. One of them we've already talked about quite a bit. It's the home opener against the Green Bay Packers. It's hard not to be excited about this game. First of all, the Saints get an opportunity to avenge themselves for a home loss in week 3, 37-30 last year, which Aaron Rodgers himself had to say that a little bit of that had to do with there not being any fans in the stands. This year, the expectation, week 1, full house of the Who Dat Nation present and creating and bringing back one of the most just raucous environments and toughest environments to play in as a visiting NFL team. So that's going to be a huge game for the city, a huge game for the team, and a huge game for whoever the starting quarterback ends up being, whether it's Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill. They have a lot to prove here in this game. Jameis Winston, first real action that he will have seen since being moved on by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Taysom Hill, first time that we would see him since the 4-game start. And of course, he used to play for this team, the Green Bay Packers. Remember, the Saints poached him from the Green Bay Packers when they felt like they could use him more effectively in their system. So that's definitely something to keep an eye out on with that quarterback battle. And of course, all the question marks around Aaron Rodgers as well. This is must-see TV. That's why it's an afternoon national game for Fox. Let's look now at Halloween, one of the first or one of the two, let me say, Halloween or holiday games for the Saints here in 2021. Halloween hosting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What better city to host a Halloween game, right? Like New Orleans is the perfect place for this. And it's a perfect situation too. Remember, again, we're talking about Green Bay being this big game because it's the first home game since a divisional loss against the Minnesota Vikings where the Who Dat Nation can actually be present. Here we are giving the Who Dat Nation an opportunity to celebrate Halloween and watch a Saints game. This is just too good to be true. And you get the idea here. It can be Jameis Winston going up against Tampa Bay in his first start against his former team. Just the great storylines here for sure. So can the Saints be can they be the boogeyman? Can the defense continue to be the boogeyman in the regular season for Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? I know that the last time that they met up, it didn't go super well, but during the regular season when these two teams met in 2020, the defense absolutely owned Tom Brady. So we'll see if they're going to be able to bring that back for some Halloween scares. And then to wrap us up in terms of our number one most exciting game, I got to go with Thanksgiving against Buffalo. I have to. I mean, look, the Saints are incredible to watch on Thanksgiving, and I'm so glad that this tradition continues to cook on. There is a Christmas Day game this year in the NFL schedule. The Saints, though, not a part of it, but they were the Christmas game last year after not getting the Thanksgiving game last year. Now they get back to Thanksgiving in their rightful home to where they can go ahead and have them some roasted buffalo. Is that a thing? I don't know if that's a thing, but have them some roasted buffalo for Thanksgiving dinner. No, but this is going to be a really great matchup. You know, you've got Josh Allen. You have this very talented offense for the Buffalo Bills, a big time test for the Saints defense, but it comes later on in the season where the Saints usually begin or have already started to hit their stride. At this point, the defense is looking better. Tre'Davious White comes back to Louisiana after spending his collegiate years in LSU. There's just a lot of really great opportunities here and a lot of really, really great action here between these two teams who could be top teams or nearly, fighting to be at the top of their conference if all things continue to go well for both of these franchises. A quick honorable mention. It's an exciting game, but it's one that has me anxious. It's on the road, Monday Night Football off the bye week, going up against the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle. That's a big game. It's tough for me to be excited about it because I'm a little bit more concerned about it than anything else. But hey, it's still good football in Seattle. Now, let me give you my record prediction before we wrap up on today's episode. I wrote out all the games here. We'll go over these quarter by quarter. We'll break them up. The first 5 games that get us to the bye week, and then we'll go 4 games to wrap up that schedule. That's what we'll be doing over the course of next week, starting on Monday. Just kind of breaking it down a little bit further. But let me give you this. I believe that the Saints can be a double-digit win team this season. I'm going to give them 11-6 or 12-5. 11-6, and this 11-6, 12-5. This hinges entirely for me on the New York Jets game in the Meadowlands, deep into December or deep into the into winter. Going up against them in a cold weather situation there and coming off of those 2 Thursday night games. Now they get the mini bye there that kind of buys them some more time before they get to the Jets, but still it's an exhausting schedule up until that game. And then they immediately have to go out on the road in cold weather conditions. I'm looking at that game. So that's the difference for me. They win that game 12-5. They lose that game 11-6. I do have the Saints splitting at this moment their series with Tampa Bay, but winning the rest of their divisional games. So whatever, Atlanta and Carolina. We'll see how it goes. But yes, so that's it. I do think that the New Orleans Saints can be a double-digit win team here in 2021. All right, so we'll continue to break down the schedule, starting more on Monday, but tomorrow, don't forget, we'll get to your questions from the Locked On Saints Facebook group, which you can join at facebook.com/groups/LockedOnSaints. And we get to part 2 of our conversation with New Orleans Saints safety and former Wisconsin Badger, Eric Burrell. Thank you, everybody who has taken the time to tune in on YouTube, who continues to tune in across all the podcast apps as well, where you can find us anywhere you get your podcast. All the support that you've shown means a ton. So thank you for watching, for liking, for subscribing, for sharing, for rating, reviewing, and for most of all, helping to grow this family. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Once again, you can find me on Twitter at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how your mom and them, and trust you, that nation. I'll holla at you.